The house stood at the end of the rain-slicked street, a brooding silhouette against the stormy sky. Its infamous quarter-moon windows stared out like menacing eyes, glinting faintly in the sporadic flashes of lightning. The Harper family sat in their car, the engine idling, the rhythmic swish of the wipers an almost hypnotic metronome in the tense silence. "It's watching us," whispered Mia, her small voice trembling as she clutched her battered teddy bear. Her wide, unblinking eyes reflected the house, a mixture of fear and fascination clouding her gaze. "It's just a house, Mia," David Harper said, though his grip on the steering wheel betrayed his unease. His voice was steady, but inside, his heart pounded. "Just an old house, nothing more." Emma Harper sat beside him, her breath fogging the cold window as she studied the looming structure. A strange weight seemed to press down on her chest, an invisible force thickening the air around them. She felt its pull, as though the house itself was daring them to enter. Mom, Jack, their 14-year-old son, muttered from the back seat, his voice unusually serious. "I don't think we should go in there." Emma forced a smile, though her stomach churned. "It's just nerves, sweetheart. Moving is always hard." Jack's eyes remained fixed on the house. "It doesn't feel like nerves." The rain fell harder as they stepped out of the car, the cold biting into their skin. The wind carried a strange sound, low whispers, unintelligible but persistent. Emma thought she saw movement in one of the windows, a fleeting shadow that vanished as soon as she focused on it. "Who's that?" Mia asked, pointing toward the upper floor. Emma followed her gaze, but the window was empty. "There's no one there, sweetie," she said, her voice tight. Mia shook her head. She was there. She waved at me. David unlocked the door, and it creaked open with a groan that echoed into the cavernous darkness. The house seemed to exhale as they stepped inside, the air heavy with the smell of mildew and something faintly metallic, like blood. The grand staircase rose before them, shrouded in shadows. David flipped the light switch, but the bulb sputtered and died, leaving only the weak beam of his flashlight to pierce the gloom. The floorboards groaned under their hesitant steps. "Welcome home," David muttered, though his words sounded hollow. The first week was uneventful, but by the second, the house began to show its true nature. The air was perpetually cold, no matter how high they set the thermostat. Doors creaked open on their own, and faint, almost imperceptible whispers echoed through the halls. Mia seemed to adapt quicker than anyone, spending hours in her room, giggling and whispering as though talking to an unseen friend. When Emma asked her about it, Mia beamed. "I'm playing with Jody. She says she's happy we're here." Emma froze. "Jody? Who's Jody?" Mia tilted her head, her expression strangely serene. "She lives here. She's been waiting for us." Emma dismissed it as an overactive imagination, but unease gnawed at her. She began waking in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her dreams plagued by visions of the house collapsing inward, swallowing her family whole. Jack, too, became withdrawn. He complained of waking at exactly 3:15 a.m. every night, the air around him freezing, as though someone stood at the foot of his bed watching. David brushed it all off as paranoia, but even he couldn't ignore the missing tools, the flickering lights, or the stench of rotting meat that would fill the kitchen without warning. One night, drawn by an inexplicable urge, Emma ventured into the attic. Beneath a pile of dusty newspapers, she found a leather-bound journal. The pages were yellowed and brittle, the handwriting frantic and slanted. "The house feeds on fear. It whispers in shadows, binds us to it. The red room is the heart. It must stay sealed." Emma's hands trembled as she read the final entry. "If you find this, leave. Burn the house. Take nothing with you. It will not let you go." She didn't tell David about the journal. He wouldn't believe her anyway. It was during a thunderous storm that the house unveiled its darkest secret. The power went out, plunging the family into a suffocating darkness. When Emma called for Mia, there was no response. Panic set in as they searched the house. They found her in the basement, standing before a small red door that hadn't been there before. Mia turned to them, her face pale and expressionless. "Jody says it's time." The door creaked open on its own, revealing a room bathed in crimson light. The walls were etched with symbols that seemed to move and writhe like living things. At the center of the room stood an altar, dark stains covering its surface. Suddenly, the shadows in the room shifted, converging into a monstrous form. Its glowing red eyes bore into them, its body pulsating like liquid smoke. It moved with a slow, deliberate malice, its presence suffocating. David stepped forward, shielding his family. The entity lashed out, sending him sprawling across the room. Emma screamed as she grabbed Mia and Jack, dragging them up the stairs. The house roared around them, its walls shaking violently. Doors slammed shut, trapping them momentarily before bursting open again. The house was alive, and it was angry. Emma reached the front door and shoved her children outside, but when she turned, David wasn't behind them. "David!" she screamed, her voice breaking. He stood at the top of the basement stairs, his face blank. "It won't let me leave," he said, his voice hollow, distant. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she dragged Jack and Mia into the car. She drove away, her hands trembling on the wheel, the house shrinking in the rearview mirror. But as she glanced back one last time, her blood ran cold. David stood in the upstairs window, his face twisted into a grotesque smile. His eyes glowed red, the same malevolent crimson as the house itself.